First of all, financial therapy. That sounds like something very new. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that and how you got into that?
I used to be in corporate and had periods where I'd made lots of money and lost lots of money and thought, what's going on here? Why? I seem to be intelligent. I seem to have certain smarts. I understand financial literacy. I know how to make money. I know how to manage money. Yet my behaviours and certainly my psychology were not matching that. So I retrained as a psychotherapist and thought, I want to work out why I and many other people are terrible with money. We often attribute things like success to money. Yeah, people that are very wealthy are often successful. That doesn't matter that if they are really terrible person, if they're damaging the planet or being terrible to their staff, we still see them as successful because we've overcoupled this idea of wealth into success. Yeah, so they're really strong narratives that we all swim in. Now, if we don't fit those narratives, if we don't see ourselves or feel because of comparison or are being projected on that we are not successful, that's going to take a big hit to our mental health. I've got a tank. Every day we have a tank of gas, let's say. And in that tank of gas, it gets depleted from our stresses, maybe our mental health issues, maybe challenges with our relationship, maybe challenges in our work. Like all this is kind of going down, the gas is leaving the bottle. Then, we have, maybe that stressful thing at work that's happening, that's taking more gas. And then we've got this issue, this financial issue that we're presented with. Now, in order to change that in our gas bottle, we are going to require more gas than we have.
What does it take to be a financially empowered woman? And what can financially empowered women do together to change the world? A shocking statistic is that around 400,000 women in Australia are at risk of homelessness. And the cause of this is the lack of education about how to build a financial foundation, starting even before we first enter the workforce and well into our retirement years. My name's Dion Payne, and I'm the founder of the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm passionate about ending homelessness, and as part of that passion, I chose to look at the systemic barriers that are causing homelessness for women in the first place. The Financially Empowered Women podcast is designed to bring you the best experts from around the world to increase your financial know-how and give you practical and women-specific tips to overcome the challenges you might be facing, such as how to negotiate a better salary, demystifying super, or how to navigate a separation and ensure the assets are distributed fairly. My role is to provide you with the best information out there to change your trajectory and become a financially empowered woman, because you deserve it, and the world needs you more than ever to own your worth and help others to do the same.
Hello and welcome to the Financially Empowered Women podcast. My name's Dion Payne, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Jane Monica Jones. Let me tell you a little bit about Jane. Jane is a financial wellbeing expert, author, teacher and speaker who has been at the forefront of the financial therapy movement. With extensive experience in both psychology and finance, Jane helps individuals and organisations understand the emotional and psychological aspects of money. Her work combines evidence-based therapeutic techniques with practical financial strategies. Welcome, Jane.
Thanks, Dion. So great to be here.
My pleasure to have you. Now, I'm really excited. There's lots of things that have excited me about your bio. First of all, financial therapy. That sounds like something very new. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that and how you got into that?
Yeah, it is relatively new. It's probably been a career or a vocation that's been around in the States longer than it has in Australia. So in the States, financial therapy was started by a group of advisors, essentially, who understood that there was something more to money than just numbers. And they created a financial therapy kind of training, which had a couple of psychotherapeutic modules to it. So understanding how we do money. How did I get into it? From being really terrible at money. That's kind of the short answer. I used to be in corporate and had periods where I'd made lots of money and lost lots of money, and thought, what's going on here? Why? I seem to be intelligent. I seem to have certain smarts. I understand financial literacy. I know how to make money. I know how to manage money. Yet my behaviours and certainly my psychology were not matching that. So I retrained as a psychotherapist and thought, you know what? I want to work out why I and many other people are terrible with money. And that's how I started. And when I opened my practice, I specialized in working with people and their struggles of money. So the way I got into this was being terrible with money. That's how it all started.
That's hilarious because I think that the majority of people would think, I'm terrible with money, let me beat myself up, I'm terrible with money, this is not going to change, this is who I am. But you retrained to understand your relationship with money. That is actually very unique.
Look, I think there's something in, when you study, there's something that's often referred to as, research, but we also call it me-search. A lot of people, I think, whether it's in the medical career or in psychotherapeutic or even in engineer, we want to find out the pain points of our lives. So I think it's a common process that a lot of people go through is that, this was causing me pain and I wanted to find out why. And that's how I started it. So it became moving from research to me-search, finding out what makes me tick in that way.
That's really incredible. And I mean, I will give you an example. So I spoke to a lady the other day who is thinking about separating, leaving her partner. And she came to me from, the sort of property advice perspective. And she was really beating up herself, just saying, I don't understand. I'm so terrible with money and, this isn't going to change and da, 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 da. And yet I just acknowledged her for the genius that she was in the work that she does already. She's a very experienced beautician. And she does amazing work and she really looks after people. So I was like, well, that's your zone of genius. It seems that money isn't your zone of genius, but that's just where you need to get help. So I say that because she's not the only person. She's not the only person that's going through this. So what is it around the mistakes that we make when it comes to financial matters and what's going on up here?
Okay, that's a big question. Let's sort of break that down. There's a couple of things. So number one, money meets our basic needs. So if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, money at its most essential space is to put food in our bellies, shelter over our heads, and clothing on our backs. So if we feel if we actually can't do that, or we believe that we can't do that for whatever reason, it's going to hit that deep survival mechanism, which makes us feel deeply vulnerable. Yeah. So that's kind of the foundation of what that, of some of that kind of really heavy foundational piece around why we might feel terrible about how we do money. Up from that is then that opportunity, certainly in Maslow, is that at some stage we want to self-actualize, or we want to have a little bit of freedom and flexibility. Now, if we're struggling financially, it hits against our kind of psyche that I don't feel free. I feel trapped. Yeah. And when we feel trapped, again, it can make us feel very vulnerable. It can make us feel stressed. It's not good for us, for our mental health, and certainly not for our well-being. So until we get further up in that hierarchy of needs, when we can have a little bit of flexibility, when we can have freedom, then our psyche or our psychology starts to feel better. Now, that's kind of a theoretical or maybe a philosophical way of looking at it. But on a day-to-day, we have a lot of social and cultural narratives that says this part of our money should have been sorted. Yeah. Doesn't matter about your zone of genius. You might be the greatest artist in the world, or you might be the greatest community giver. But if you haven't got that part of your life sorted, money, this is what cultures and social cues tell us, there's something fundamentally wrong with us. Yeah. That's what we get told. So we often attribute things like success to money. Yeah, people that are very wealthy are often successful. That doesn't matter that if they are really terrible person, if they're damaging the planet or being terrible to their staff, we still see them as successful because we've overcoupled this idea of wealth into success. Yeah, so they're really strong narratives that we all swim in. Now, if we don't fit those narratives, if we don't see ourselves or feel because of comparison or are being projected on that we are not successful, that's going to take a big hit to our mental health. And, that's kind of what's happening there. And it's a really hard force, particularly, say, in societies like, or, economies and societies like in Australia and any other kind of developed nation, where money and success is part of that life goal in some way, rather than, say, community or the environment or sustainability. It's a hard thing to push against. So we are really, forced. This hand is forced against us, whether we choose it or not. Certainly in Australia and other similar economies. So that's kind of sociologically and I suppose anthropomorphically what's happening for us, is this is the sort of assault that's happening to our mental health and our well-being because of these cultural narratives and social cues.
Wow. So not only are we giving ourselves a hard time for not having our money sorted, but the society is giving us a hard time in the same way. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about what's happening with the housing crisis, which is obviously something that I think about a lot. And where you talked about people's mental health because they haven't got their money sorted. I guess that is also exacerbated by, I don't have my money sorted, I don't have a house sorted, I should have a home by now, and I don't have that. Gee whiz, I'm a failure.
Yeah, look, I mean, okay, so again, if we're looking at the basic needs, a stable roof over our head. This is a fundamental thing that we as humans require. It's going to impact not only our mental health, but our physical well-being as well. If we don't have a sense of stability in our life, and if we feel that our housing is either unaffordable or is tenuous, that it could be taken away at any stage, which is, facing for a lot of Australians certainly is that, in the rental market, it's not certain that you can live there permanently. So that's going to have an impact on your cognitive load, or the load that you carry every day, as well as all the other loads that you carry around your work and around social pressure, around, meeting relationship needs, all that sort of stuff. And if stability, which is a foundational need that we need as humans, is tenuous, it's going to add to that load. And, that's not only have we got the social component that we're comparing ourselves, not only are we giving ourselves a hard time, but we've actually got the facts that our housing is maybe somewhat unstable. So that can add to the, why we might feel really terrible about our situation.
Yeah, and then you're talking about cognitive load here. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm really joining the dots. A conversation that I was having with somebody yesterday, and she was saying that she was feeling anxious about what's happening in the world. We've just gone and invaded another country, and who knows how that is going to end up and what effect. Well, we can already see the effect on oil prices and therefore the impact that has on fuel crisis and cost of living crisis, which, we were already having a challenge with anyway as a society. So in terms of cognitive load, it just seems like a really heavy time. And actually, how can anybody have a strategic sort of conversation or strategic thinking about money when all of this is going on? What's the solution?
Look, I mean, for me, it's about hunkering down in a way that can, we need to preserve our resources. And those resources are not just, your house or the stuff in it. It's the resources about your energy and your time and your focus. It's about the quality of relationships that are important to you. So we need to hunker down in resources. I feel, this is my opinion, that the way that we live our life now is kind of out of control. Yeah. All this, having to meet the I don't know, the goals or the expectations of a modern life are, I don't know whether this physiology or this body or nervous system was really designed for that. Yeah. Were we designed to have this level of chronic stress, this level of lack of social engagement and isolation, this level of mental health issues? I don't think we were really designed for this. So I think in a way it's made us lose our, what's important. So I often used to talk like this in COVID and the cost of living crisis. It's about hunkering down. It's about actually finding what's more valuable in your resources and what's not. So, in times of distress and of uncertainty, it's important to regroup and batten down the hatches in some way. And I think that's an important thing, not just when there is, stress out in the world, but also generally, because I think, as I said, I don't think we live in a natural state for us humans to be living in. I think we live in a weird kind of over-stressed, stretched way of being. And I don't think that's what we were really meant to be designed that way. Certainly as I get older, the more simplicity of things that I'm more gravitated towards, whether it's nature or my garden or whatever. And I think we've lost our way in some ways. So I think these moments like COVID, like the cost of living crisis, and certainly now, is about going, okay, well, how can I withdraw a little bit to understand what's more valuable, what's more precious in my life than maybe some of this aspirational stuff. So that's kind of my opinion, I think, on that one.
If you've been watching the news lately, it's easy to feel a sense of despair between power-hungry global leaders and absolute chaos and division. It can feel like things are spiraling out of control. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and just to have a sense of powerlessness. But there is a way to push back. We can stop looking at what they are doing and start looking at what we can do. At Women for Homes, we firmly believe that where we put our money is making a choice for the kind of world that we want to live in. Our mission is powerful: to mobilise 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030, whilst being financially empowered along the way. It's practical, it's tangible, it's something that we can do now, and it's something that we can do to take our power back. Join us at www.womenforhomes.com. That's women4homes.com. Oh, look, I would second that. And actually, first of all, I would say we are so off script now.
I can imagine we are. Yeah.
And I think it's important. I think it's really important to, just talk about what's really happening. And we will come back around to financial therapy, because I can see that there's a big sort of loop that we have to explore, and then we'll tie this up neatly in a bow. But I did just want to speak to what you were sharing about the sort of battening down the hatches, hunkering down. At the weekend, I just had a very strong sense of, we used to have a garden. We started a garden in COVID. We started growing, well, we'd had a vegetable garden before then, but it lay fallow a little bit. And then COVID happened, and it was like, we need to get back into the garden. And then now this time has a pretty similar feel to it. It's like, we need to get back into the garden. So I've been ordering seeds, and we reconditioned the garden beds at the weekend. And actually, in that preparation, it brought us together closer as a family. It was something that we all did to lighten the load. We had a bit of a chain going in terms of, I was the one that was digging the soil that we just got from the landscaping supply. My husband was carrying it over. One of my kids was tipping it into the garden beds. The other one was mushing it around. And I looked over at one stage and I was like, oh, this is probably the most amount of time that we've actually spent together doing one thing together, which is really nice. So there's something about these times where it is nice to just go, well, what are our resources? Okay, well, people power. So we've got our family, we've got our wider community, and we can lean into that and find those moments of joy. So, we have the luxury of not having, sort of the bombs dropping on us right at this moment in time. So it's like, well, how do we sort of appreciate what we've got and create more of those moments together where we can enjoy that human connection and sense of, wow, actually life is pretty good in this moment. We can only look at what's happening moment by moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's come back to financial therapy. So how does that work? And part of the reason that I'm asking this is because it feels like a bit of a relief to go, oh, well, if somebody's got financial challenges, they're not broken. There's a way through it. And there's something that, that there's an opportunity, and it's called financial therapy, that can help. So how does it help?
Okay, so it helps I suppose I'll go back to, who are my clients? I think that's a good place to start. So my clients are really broad. They have lots of money and they have a little bit of money. They come from every socio-economic, ethnic, cultural background, both males and females, and those that don't identify, as well as young and old. So they're a big, broad bunch. Why do they come? Because they're stressed. They're stressed because they don't make enough. They're stressed because they have a lot, but they don't feel it. Or they're stressed that they're going to inherit a lot and they don't know how to manage it. They're stressed because they spend it. They're stressed because they don't spend it. They're stressed because they're completely overwhelmed. Yeah. So that's kind of my group, the people that I kind of work with. So what happens is the money is just a lens, like any lens that we have in our life, like our mental health, about our relationships, maybe our body issues. Money is just one of those places that can stress us or make us feel vulnerable. So my lens is money. Yeah. Money is, for me, in my world, money is not numbers. Money is activation and triggering, or it might feel threatening at the more extreme levels. This wad of money or the whole of this money that's not there feels stressful and overwhelming. So my job is to work with my clients in a couple of ways. Yeah. And I often use this thing called the capacity model. So I've got a tank. Every day we have a tank of gas, let's say. And in that tank of gas, it gets depleted from our stresses, maybe our mental health issues, maybe challenges with our relationship, maybe challenges in our work. Like all this is kind of going down. The gas is leaving the bottle. Then we have, maybe that stressful thing at work that's happening, that's taking more gas. And then we've got this issue, this financial issue that we're presented with, whether it's I'm inheriting a whole lot of money and I don't know how to manage that, or I'm got a terrible spending habit and I don't know how to manage that. Now, in order to change that in our gas bottle, we are going to require more gas than we have. Yeah. And so often what I'm doing is two things. I'm either repairing some of the issues that you have, like your stressful work, your mental health issues, maybe your trauma or your adversity or your historical trauma and adversity, or maybe intergenerational stuff, that I'm adding more gas. As well as I'm also creating a bigger container for you, a container that maybe you never really got, yeah, because of your childhood, your upbringing, because of the history or trauma or adversity that you've experienced, that your container was a little bit like this. And in order to do the life that you want to do, you need a bigger container. Yeah. So I am repairing or adding further gas to my client's life in some way so that they can do their life the way that they want to do it. Now, often I have people like business people or people that want to go back and study, and because they have limited gas in their thing, to study is going to take a whole lot of gas that they don't have, right? And people often go, oh, every day I want to start working on my new business, or I want to expand on it, or, I want to go back and study or something like this. And I just every day don't seem to get a chance to do it. And I'm like, well, let's go through and have a little look at your gas tank. Where is the space? Where's the gas for this new thing? That's going to take that much gas, and you've only got this much, you've only got a centimetre and you need 2 inches, right? So what I'm doing is working at repairing or giving a little bit more juice back to the gas tank in a way. And that can happen in a multitude of ways. That can be that we might repair trauma or adversity, so we know that our trauma doesn't not leave a mark, essentially. So that can be trauma such as adverse childhood experiences, maybe neglect or abuse, but it also can be less extreme, so that we may have been sick in our childhood, or our parent was sick, or there was a breakdown in the family structure, or maybe there was some sort of natural disaster or economic issue in our family structure. Those experiences leave a mark on us and reduce our capacity, reduce the gas in our tank. So I might be repairing those pieces. I might be looking at the issues of self-esteem, in order to expand and grow. We might have to repair those issues of self-esteem in some way. So it's what I love about my job is it's not a one size fit all process. The thing that I kind of often rail against in financial literacy and financial education is that we often do a cookie cutter approach for all financial education in some way. But the value or the benefit for an individual is to have someone or something, certainly in the therapeutic or the financial therapeutic space, attune uniquely to my needs, the needs that will make me thrive. Different from making my sister thrive or my husband thrive or my, colleagues thrive. What's going to make me thrive? And the challenge can often be that in financial literacy or education spaces that we put everyone down as the same person, that they've got this, you just need to save, you just need to budget, Well, I rail against that. I actually work with people in a very unique way where we just try and work out what's going to make you thrive, what's going to make you budget, what's going to make you do a bit of delayed gratification or whatever it is, or what's going to make you feel more confident or more empowered. So that's kind of the short answer of how I work with financial therapy. So one, it is working very attunedly with people about what's going to support them to thrive. Two, maybe dealing with some of their trauma or their adversity or mental health issues or levels of capacity. And, whatever that piece is, from whether it's, a big swathe of clients that are coming to work with me at the moment are people that are inheriting large amounts of money. So with this great wealth transfer, and a lot of them feel they lack confidence, agency and empowerment to manage such a big amounts of money. So, it's a mixed bag of people that I work with, essentially.
Beautiful. And look, I love your analogy of you're helping people to increase the amount of gas in their tank, as well as increasing the capacity, so making the tank bigger so that they can take on more challenges. I think just for me, having that visual really makes a lot of sense. And it's like, oh yeah, of course. So that's why, there's times, and I think about this for women in particular, where we're seen as women to be carrying the invisible load. So it's just making sure that all the kids' needs are met, that older relatives are being looked after, that, you know, the house is tidy and all of that. And even if everybody else is sort of chipping in, just being the overseer and you know, sort of having that additional load on top
Takes
of.
up a bit of gas in our tank. Absolutely, it does.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love what you had to say as well about the wealth transfer and some of your clients coming to you because, you know, it's scary, like the responsibility. How do I handle this? And I wonder how many, because I've heard that the wealth transfer in a lot of ways is more towards women. And I'd love you to speak a little bit about that wealth transfer towards women, and also why there's such a sort of a gap when it comes to financial literacy, financial capability when it comes to women as well.
Yeah. So my feeling is that a couple of things. So women in certain cohorts, it's certainly changing now more recently in the generations that are coming up, had different socialization experiences. So what that means, socialization is the soup that you grew up in. Yeah. The experiences and what you saw and experienced in your developmental period when you were growing up as a kid. Yeah. So some demographics for women, some cohorts for women were not socialized to be the breadwinner, to be the person that took agency of the finances, of the growth in the family, whatever that was. For some of us, that was the realm for men. Yeah. So because we weren't socialized, we are at a little bit of certain groups. So I'm only talking about particular groups. Yeah. We were behind the eight ball in having that as part of our natural level of confidence and agency and empowerment. Yeah. So if you're, let's say we have an example of you were told pretty much that, you know what, just you don't really need to go to university or maybe study something, but you'll go and get married and then your husband will go and do all that for you. Yeah. Now that was a really traditional thing, even at some level, my experience. Yeah. And I'm 57. Yeah. So that was slightly the narrative. You know what? You don't really need to know about this sort of stuff because you'll go off, you can go and study for a little bit and then you'll probably go off and get married and that'll be the man's job. Yeah. Now, so you go, okay, one, all right, well, that's not really my domain, so I don't need to feel capable or capable in it. And two, there's a level of confidence that doesn't get sort of instilled in my belief that I can do it. Yeah. So socialization is part of it. Two, systemic. Yeah. So we know very obviously that for women, we have a lot of systemic challenges against us, that we earn less, we have more to pay, such as pink tax, things are more expensive for women, we have more expenses associated because of being a woman, as well as time out of our career and earning money, as well as having to take, as you mentioned, take care of children, maybe elderly, and maybe the community. Yeah. So we've got socialization challenges and structural challenges. Yeah. So all turns up to our level of confidence and self-esteem. So in a way, we're behind the eight ball, yeah, in dealing with large swathes of money, logistically, as well as confidently, yeah. So for me, the definition that I give for financial well-being is you've got financial literacy is the knowledge, yeah. I know that there's budgets, I know that there's saving things, there's term deposits, all that sort of stuff for investment. Plus, so that's financial literacy or financial education plus financial capability. Now, financial capability in my definition is I feel confident or empowered to apply what I know. Yeah, the knowledge. That is my definition of financial well-being. So not only I know stuff, but I also feel confident to implement stuff. And that is truly what financial well-being is in my definition. Now, you may have a whole lot of knowledge, but what I see in my therapeutic practice is just because you know something doesn't mean you'll actually act on it. So it's about that agency, all that soft skills, those capacity to have a level of confidence, empowerment. I'm able to take a measured risk. I'm able to do delay gratification or behavior modification. I have a capacity of dealing with stress because, of course, goals at some level are going to impact my cortisol levels and my nervous system. So all of that right combination means then we can get on and follow these goals, right? Now, if we are going to inherit it, a lot of money, I'm a woman, let's say, and I'm inheriting a whole lot of money. I haven't had those socialized experiences. I haven't been given a level of agency that I am confident that I feel confident and empowered to make those decisions, as well as maybe I didn't have the structural or the systemic experiences of, understanding investments or actually I'll come back to that, but understanding financial advice or whatever that is, then I'm at a disadvantage. So I'm going to give you an example actually of this client that came to me, and I've got absolute permission to share this. She had come and had been given a whole lot of money. But because of her upbringing, that was from a migrant family, they didn't have very much. But when her parents passed, the house was a small fortune, Sydney property prices, yeah? Anyway, she had no socialization growing up because they were pretty, small working class family, yeah? Didn't have a lot of money. So there wasn't a lot of socialization of money in her upbringing. Then, when she inherited the money, she had this other issue, which is that she had no exposure to the system of money in some way. And what I mean by that is that she felt unable to speak to financial advisors because they were a status higher than her. Yeah. So she felt unable, lacked confidence and felt unempowered to actually meet someone to serve her in some way to talk about her finances. And so she finally found me, and we worked with this whole status thing. Yeah. This systemic thing that, those down here feel awkward to speak to those up here, in a way. And so we had to get her psychologically and behaviorally to say, yeah, I'm ready to meet someone that can serve me, a financial advisor. So it was really interesting to see that not just because she's got money doesn't mean she's going to get confidence, that she's going to feel empowered, that she's going to be able to feel she has a place to meet someone like a financial advisor. Yeah. So it was a really fascinating inquiry into say, look at that. So it's, we often think if I get that windfall, it's all going to be happy, but, happy and great for me. But a lot can show up when we get that windfall. A lot of issues of status or issues of, maybe if I move up and my community's down here, am I going to lose my community, So there's a lot at play when that dynamic happens. And if we haven't had the socialized experience and then we've had some structural or systemic issues, it's going to be a challenge for a lot of people to overcome. So this is, it's a big part of what I'm seeing coming through my practice at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's interesting that regardless of where you sit, like if you don't have a lot of money or if you have a lot of money, financial therapy is still there for you if you need that support in meeting whatever you're facing at that particular time.
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. Look, I think we all need a little bit of mental health occasionally, don't we? So whether it's to do with money, whether it's to do relationships, whatever it is, it's no different, I think.
For sure. Now, Jane, we are at the end of our interview now, and I've had such a lot of value out of this conversation, and there's also so many other questions that I wanted to ask you as well. So I'd love to get you on as a guest another time. For now, though, for anybody that wants to follow you, wants to find out more about what you do and perhaps get some help through you and through the work that you do, how can they do that?
Yeah, look, the best place to go is janemonicajones.com. There you can get in contact with me to see whether you might come and work with me one-on-one. If that's not what you want to do, you can see some trainings. I have a learning management system or a platform, a financial wellbeing platform called Capability. You might be able to check out that. It has lots of information on not only financial literacy about budgeting and saving and debt repayment, but it's got a lot of programs on there as well that look at the psychological and behavioral challenges with money as well. So that's called Capability. You can find it on my site. Otherwise, maybe you work for an organization. I have a company called the Financial Wellbeing Company. We offer programs for employees and people that work for organizations. We offer financial wellbeing programs for them, as well as I work with financial and therapeutic professionals in my other company called Procovo, where we train in the impact of trauma has on money. So if you work with people and want to get some support about how best to serve the people that you work with, you can look at Procovo. Anyway, it's all on my site. jmonicajones.com is the best place to start, and you can reach out to me, and happy to connect if you feel you want a bit more support.
Perfect. So Jane, thank you so much for sharing what you have today. It's been really powerful. I've loved the conversation, and looking forward to seeing you next time.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's beautiful to be here.